Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started while I'm letting people in here still. I'm Christy Lyons. I'm the Dean of Corporate and Community Education at North Central Michigan College. And we're so pleased to have Chris and Taylor with us tonight. Chris and I, we've done a lot of programs together, kind of starting back about 4 years ago during COVID when we could only do online presentations. Chris did a lot of presentations for us about history that were great. And eventually we were able to get and do some in-person tours, but we're glad to have him. He owns Arlington Jewelers, and he is the president of the Hemingway Society. And Taylor is joining him tonight, and I haven't met Taylor yet. Chris, do you want to say just a couple words about Taylor?
Taylor's known for his documentary work, and he's an excellent scholar and an amazing historian. He's a Harbor Springs guy here, and has done a few very well accepted and received documentaries that have been put out there nationally. I think probably the best known one is on the Boston Strangler.
Right. So just a couple housekeeping things. If everybody could stay on mute, that will help with background noise. And then if you have questions, if you could type those in the chat down below. You can see the chat button right in the middle there. You can put your questions in, and Chris and Taylor will address those at the end. And so I think we're ready to get started.
Well, I'd like to first thank everybody for joining us tonight for this presentation on the club's Manitou and Ponytail. And I would like to dedicate this presentation to Judy Landis, my dear friend, who has since passed. We're actually in her living room here. We are at the old Manitou Club, which it's kind of, it's always an honor to be out here. It's such a interesting and historic place. But again, Judy lived here for years and years. So with all the history in the building, I always really have a very peaceful vibe when I'm here in her living room, and I miss her. So I just wanted to dedicate this presentation to her. Since I moved here 16 years ago and began doing tours, history tours for the Hemingway group specifically, I just got fascinated by the local history. And one of the most talked about things that just keeps coming up over and over and over again is the Club Ponytail and the Club Manitou. And they're on the same property. It's Pleasant View Road, as you can see, 1929. The building was built here. So we're kind of on the corner of Pleasant View and Pleasant View. And it's really sort of become like one of the holy grails of Emmett County's history. I would say partially because it encompasses two distinct and fascinating eras of popular Americana history. But as my co-presenter tonight, Taylor will tell us, we are actually, there's quite a few similarities between the two incarnations of the building. Since the club was a high-end illegal drinking and gambling establishment that actually opened in 1929, which is a little late in the Prohibition game. You know, this is getting close to the repeal of Prohibition. So I just wanted to set the stage a little bit about what was going on in the area that led to the building of the club in 1929. The original attempt to ban alcohol, the first clash was between the Porters and the Ingalls families in 1865. They both had established residency down by pretty much where the old village of Bear River was. And you may recognize the old Mission Church down there, which still stands, built in 1859. But the Ingalls were pro-alcohol, and the Porters were just definitely not for alcohol. And that was really when the first clash started here in the area. And of course, years earlier, prior to that, the Mormons arrived on Beaver Island and tried to ban alcohol from the Irish. And you can imagine how that may have went. Didn't fly so well. And of course, Bayview has always been dry. Of course, you see people a lot of times walking around in the summer with thick thermoses, kind of full of ice, and who knows what other kind of possible cocktails. I know there's a cottage down there specifically named the Smiles Cottage, and they have a hidden cupboard there where they kept all the alcohol back in the day because you didn't want people just showing up at your house and seeing alcohol. It was kind of a faux pas there. According to the publication by the Historical Society of Michigan, Emmett County was dry under the local public option, which would have happened during the year of voting and the month of voting. And in 1909, Emmett County went dry. By 1910, years prior to the Volstead Act, 700,000 people in Michigan lived in dry counties. And by 1911, 700 saloons, 10 breweries had lost their licenses. but of course the demand for alcohol still remained. And this is one of my favorite stories, kind of catches up to how this club became popular also. In 1911, Frank Fochman, the owner, everybody knows the City Park Grill. Frank Fochman was arrested and fined and actually went to jail for violating the public option. What does he do when he gets out? Well, he builds the building to the left there. You see City Park on the right, the grill cafes on the left. So instead of closing down the saloon, he opens up yet another saloon with secret tunnels, passageways underneath. There's one of those passageways there. And that actually leads to the old Cushman Hotel, which was next door. I did a tour for the Fochman family this year, and they told me about how all the hotels in towns had different deals rigged with different speakeasies in the area. And of course, all this is going on right across the street from the county courthouse. So there was obviously some payola going on. And anytime you have families like the Anheuser, the Busch, Hiram Walker, you're going to have alcohol in the area. These are some of the records that I was able to find through Greenwood Cemetery, which is a great resource for historians. Fochman is actually arrested several times and fined like $5, $10 for the next few years, all through Prohibition. He'll never really see a day in jail. These were just kind of really ways of publicizing the fact that you could get alcohol at different establishments, including the Park Garden. The one that cracks me up the most, though, is at this time, you have a directory here that shows that Fochman's actually selling soft drinks and also doing automotive repair upstairs of City Park Grill, which is not actually accurate, obviously. And then here's that bar just jam-packed during Prohibition. They put a little barrier you can see to the left so you couldn't just look through the window and see. But that's City Park Grill right at the height of Prohibition, and the bar's jam-packed with men dressed in business suits. So it must be around 5 o'clock or 9. I'm hoping it's 5 o'clock. And then, of course, the City Park Grill is the most famous drinker who came here during Prohibition and was searching for alcohol, and that would have been a young Ernest Hemingway. And I love hearing stories, firsthand accounts. I like to think a couple of people have helped with the history here, and that would be Merrill Hankey, Carla Buckmaster, Rick Wiles. People have shared so much history with us over the years. But I love when I hear the firsthand accounts. Especially there's a gentleman in town here that Merrill used to tell me about, Ned Fenlon. He was a judge. He worked his way through law school by running liquor around the Great Lakes. Rumor is that he had the fastest Chris Craft, and he would actually, the story went that he would stop at the Grand Hotel and the Coast Guard would actually help unload the liquor. And that story was actually just reiterated to me and confirmed by a gentleman who knew Ned very well. And his name was Charlie Brown. So the story's got to be true, right? It's estimated that up to 80% of the high-end liquor that came into the United States came through the Windsor corridor in Detroit. It was the second most profitable commodity, netting hundreds of millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And most of that money was controlled by the Purple Gang. And they're a group of Jewish businessmen and gangsters from Detroit. Looked like a bunch of rough hooligans there. And then in 1928, a man named Al Gerhardt, his real name was Alla Schwender, a German Jewish boy from Pennsylvania, former bagman or driver for the Purple Gang. I'm guessing he was well trusted by them. He arrives in northern Michigan, and that's Al, the tallest one in the picture there. And if you look to the far left, you'll see a one-armed bandit there, a slot machine. Well, Al arrives in northern Michigan and began construction of the infamous Club Manitou. And there we go. There's the Club Manitou. That's where we are at tonight in that building. Well, this club was for the elite. There's many speakeasies in the area, but this was for the out-of-towners. This is for resorters only, and it's for very wealthy people. And it's high-end, top-shelf liquor in a very comfortable and protected environment. Now, if you've seen the side of a cabin and home in northern Michigan, it's very rare that you would see a sign with lounge room, dining room as you walk in the door. And when you came through that door, you were met by this little guy. His name's Paul Pepper. And excuse my French, but he looks like a pissed off Joe Pesci. He was a small man, but with a vicious temper. And he was the doorman. And he's the one that will say, yes, you made it in, or no, you had to go home. Now, if you made it through, you would have been escorted downstairs. You would have had to gone through at least 3 steel doors, including a jail door that was hung in the summer. And you would have wound up in a very elaborate dining room. If you look at this picture, you see that one-armed bandit still sitting right there, the slot machine. And then there's one of the main dining rooms. The windows up there were all backlit, so you didn't know you were in the basement necessarily. And they had a very elaborate ventilation system for smokers. And most importantly, a well-stocked bar. And again, this is all top-shelf alcohol, Dewar's Scotch. Some of the drinks were actually being imported from Europe, so they had the top brands coming in from Scotland and Ireland. Here's a couple more pictures of the bar. A little blurrier, sorry about that. But during Prohibition, it had been a rare sight to see a bar that was that well stocked. I think this building is probably one of, if not the best preserved speakeasies, possibly even in the country. And then I love this picture. It shows us a Class C restaurant license along with some various fake liquor licenses. Of course, nothing like this was ever being distributed during 1929. It's absolutely right at the tail end of the Volstead Act, but absolutely illegal to have alcohol at this point. The club had some of the best chefs in the country. They were brought in from New York. And this was down in the basement also here of the building. People on the tour will be able to see these areas on Saturday. And then we feel these are actually promo shots that were sent out to advertise the Club Manitou, if you will. And if you look at the guy, the second from the right, this smiley little guy with a tuxedo, which, again, a tuxedo was not uncommon at that time. Everybody would have been dressed to the nines back then, especially at this club. But if you look at that gentleman, you'll see he's actually in this picture pretending to receive cigarettes and gum from the cigarette girl. So again, all the best service you could have gotten in any club anywhere in the country at any time. But these pictures were sent out again as promo shots. And then you had a bandstand for some great live entertainment. That's still down in the basement. We'll see some pictures of that in a moment in the current state. And I love the fact that Al was so well protected and comfortable. Here he is in this picture, shown smiling, basically cutting out $100 bills and tallying up the day's receipts. Now, if you wanted to call the Club Manitou, which again is an illegal Prohibition era speakeasy, all you had to do is pick up the phone and dial number 1. So quite the popular place to be if you were connected, and not exactly. I guess it's hidden right in plain sight, right? FOIA records show the FBI was definitely aware that large sums of money was being gambled here in the building, and mostly, I'm guessing, a few reasons that the club was so successful, including the fact that Al was involved in a racket, counterfeiting racket, also. And we'll talk more about that, and Taylor will tell you a little bit about the gambling or the counterfeiting and other schemes that were going on here. FBI file number 7-576, section 185 of April 1935 states the existence of the Club Manitou and other such establishments, such as the Club Ramona, could be explained because Sheriff Brian of Petoskey has the reputation of protecting the powerful and wealthy gamblers that frequented the local clubs. And that would be basically the Club Manitou and the Club Ramona, which was in Harbor Springs, just a little ways away. Ultimately, the club's raided in 1952. Now, these are some pictures of the infrastructure. This is coming down the stairs there. You can just kind of see that first door at the top. And then if you look on the far right-hand side, you'll see the sliding steel door that's still in existence there. And then about halfway down would have been that jail door that was open partially during the summer months to let the cooler air in. There's that sliding door again. It's funny, the day that I took these photographs was the first time I was allowed into the club. Judy let me in and let me take pictures of the whole place. She even came down with us. And then the very next day, I ran into a gentleman that we're going to hear more about in a few moments named Robert Knapp. And he wrote a book called Gangsters in Northern Michigan and wrote a lot of different stories about the Purple Gang and did a lot of research. And he came in my store and he said, well, there's no way all the rumors about all that infrastructure down in the basement exist. He said, I don't understand. They were paying everybody off. Why would they be worried about a raid? And it just so happened that was, again, one day after I'd been in the club. So I pulled these pictures out, and he's like, son of a gun, you got to be kidding me. This is probably one of the strongest barriers you have down the basement, and that's concrete reinforced with steel, and it's on huge rolling wheels there. And then you can kind of make out if you zoom in or if your eyes are a little better than mine, but there's 3 huge spikes there in the door. And then there's 3 holes in the wall to the right, reciprocating holes. And when that door was closed, it's pretty much impenetrable. At a local presentation I was doing about the club, a gentleman told me that his father was hired to come down and reinforce inside the concrete with copper. And that would prevent torches from being able to cut through the cement so easily. It's funny because just a couple weeks ago, Taylor found a big chunk of pure copper sheeting downstairs. Kind of corroborates a little bit of that story. There I am in one of the vaulted rooms downstairs, which I guess we'll be seeing on Saturday. And we're not sure exactly what the purpose was for these rooms. That's the fun part is there's a lot of secrets to be answered about the old Club Manitou. And people keep saying that these walls could talk. Well, they are talking, and we're discovering new things every day. Here's an incinerator. The scale is hard to tell from there, but it's very large. And Taylor's going to tell you a little bit more about the incinerator in a little bit later. Not many cottages in Northern Michigan have a big incinerator in their basement. And this is another vaulted room. This is a really strange one because there's like cement steps coming down. And then if you see in the bottom, kind of about in the middle, you'll see a steel bar. Once that door was closed, that bar would be propped up against that, and it would be almost impossible to compromise the integrity of that security wall. And of course, an old safe down there. Who doesn't love safes? And this one's for the guests that come down here. Well, of course, I had to open it. It was empty. But Taylor, a couple of weeks ago, was opening that, and the door fell off. And I'm telling you, that thing is heavy. I was hoping to find a pistol or some money in there. Who knows? And we don't think that that's the only safe on the property. There's pretty good indications. Al loved to hide safes. And at his house, is that right, Taylor? At his house, he had a secret room with a safe there. So as the story keeps going here, it's going to keep progressing over who knows how long. We keep just discovering more and more stuff and chasing down rumors. 8 years later, attempts were made to reopen the club by the new owners, which was the Douglas family, but they were still unable to secure a liquor license by about 1959, 1960 when they took over the property. As you can see in the middle there is the original house that we're sitting in right now. And then to the right was the addition that was built. My notes tell me 46, but it's, again, nobody kept exact records about illegal gambling operations. You didn't want to document all this stuff. But 1946 is the year that I heard that these 2 extensions, the big buildings to the right there, were built. And those will later become the Club Ponytail. So in 1960, one of the top things going on in the country was rock and roll music. In Greenwich Village, where I just was the Cafe Wah, and that's still there from this area. And kids had some spending money. So if you can't secure a liquor license, what do? You open up a club for teens that's alcohol free. And those were the 2 indoor buildings where concerts were held. So this was a live music venue for teens. Here's a poster. Opened in 1962 and featured some of the top touring acts in the world. And I mean some of the best. So we had all the great acts coming up from Detroit, but you also have bands coming from all the way across from England, across the pond, and from all around the United States. The best part about doing these presentations that I love, again, is the stories that people share with us. And we're getting all kinds of stories. Just today, I was looking at Facebook and they're talking about, in the thread on tonight's presentation, people remember dancing out here and coming out and doing what kids do at popular clubs like this. But and then they'll tell you they remember seeing the Beach Boys, which you see in that picture there. Admission that night was $250. Bobby Vinton, Roy Orbison. I mean, some of the greatest acts in the world. If you think about this is outside, so most people remember the indoors, but the big thing was the outdoor summer venues. And this is a stage that's still on the property. So if you imagine again, some of the bands, in fact, what was the last act? I'm trying to remember. Sly and the Family Stone. If you could imagine Sly and the Family Stone dressed in full psychedelic regalia, standing outside in Harbor Springs, Michigan, getting ready to step on that stage. And all that infrastructure is still here, and that's part of the project. And Taylor's going to tell you more about the project and what's going to happen with the property here. But it's preservation, and then hopefully turn it into a museum so people can come in and enjoy. But we still want to keep exploring. When Judy owned the property, I asked her one time, Judy, why would you keep 3 acres of cement in your backyard with an old stage? And she said, well, my husband and I love to play tennis. You see the two steel poles there, and so they had a tennis court out back. And then another great story was a sweet lady. I just did a presentation at the Friendship Center in Harbor Springs, and she was a server at the Club Ponytail. I remember seeing all the acts, and she was the famous green apple soda that they have here. But she also remembers that the gentleman that soon became her husband, she met him here, and his job was to patrol the parking lot, which is just beyond that wall, with a flashlight to keep kids from doing what kids do and park cars especially during the 60s and early 70s, I guess. And then just the other day, we keep hearing some very sweet stories, and Taylor's going to fill you in more on that too. But one that I love is Reg Smith. Probably everybody knows Reg Smith from the Perry Hotel. And he told me just today about being awoken in the middle of the night when he was a young boy as the family gathered in his bedroom and watched the Ponytail burn to the ground in 1969. And they could see that from across the bay. And then probably my favorite, as you can see, there's the stage downstairs. A lot of musician friends of mine. I'm a musician, so I love the era of the 60s as much as I love the old gambling era of the club. The building's going to look a lot better shape when people come in here. The stage is still there, but all that insulation has been cleaned up and moved. And then at the Friendship Center, this is the gentleman that showed up, and I kind of want to leave him anonymous at this time, but he said, I got something to show you that I found on the property years ago. And this was the first jar he pulled out, and it was full of poker chips. Now, we can't be too shocked about the swastikas on those because, again, this is a Jewish-owned club, and this is prior to the whole, Adolf Hitler thing. The swastika is one of the oldest symbols in the world and seen in many cultures, but he had this jar of perfectly preserved poker chips. And I've also heard rumor about a friend of mine who has pure ivory ones. I don't think it's a rumor. He's just waiting for a chance to show me. And then I think this is my favorite thing that the gentleman had. This just cracks me up. You're not going to be able to read that, but that says small unloaded. And so those are die in there. A whole jar of dice from the area. Small unloaded, large unloaded. So the odds are always in the favor of the house, but in this particular case at the Club Manitou, the odds were definitely stacked in favor. And then just recently, Meryl Hankey brought out a friend of hers, and he remembers Al sharing stories with him in later years. Al returned. The club gets busted in 1959, the Manitou, and Al goes to Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, and does the exact same thing. He opens up another club called the Colonial Club. That name keeps popping up over and over again, and he'll be busted again around 1960. But up until then, he was basically doing the same thing, serving illegal alcohol and gambling in a club out in West Virginia. And this gentleman remembers playing pool with him in later years, and Al was telling him all these stories in the basement of his house. And he said, make sure and know for sure none of these stories ever leave this basement. And Al was still quite spooked out late in later years because, as the story goes, you never leave the mafia or organized crime. So he was periodically kind of aroused, even in his later years, by strange limousines, rumors of limousines looking for him. But this gentleman the other day, as we sat right in this very room, told us about a story when Al got an unexpected package one day, and it was a Christmas gift. And he was so suspicious about it, he took it out in his backyard and shot it multiple times, thinking there was explosives or something dangerous in the inside. And it was really just full of cookies and cakes from his girlfriend. So those are some of the stories that we've heard so far. And that's really why we've had this great opportunity to come and share what we know about the club. And we're really looking for what other people here remember about the club, because this is just a little bit before my time. The club burns to the ground in 1969. The outdoor section is still preserved, but the indoor section is gone. But there is still a passageway down there that went to the old indoor club. But thank God the fire department was able to save this building that we're in, which is the most historic on the property. And again, just a very special place for me. I would like to say this is a quote that drinking constitutes an act of protest, of affirmation, and of youthful solidarity in the face of threatened social liberties. And then, as Hemingway said, Dad says it's okay to drink as long as you drink only from bottles that are already opened. And with that, I'd like to turn the talk over to my great friend, Taylor Dueweke, historian and documentary filmmaker, as he tells you about his project. Thank you very much.
Hello out there. So my name is Taylor Dueweke. I've never done a Zoom presentation before, so bear with me. I should take this hat off. My mom would want me to do that. I'm just really proud of my friend Tom Graham, who is now the mayor of Harbor Springs, the most badass city in Michigan. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. And Tom Graham's probably who we have to blame, him and Ward Wallstrom, for telling me stories of the ponytail my whole life. And I haven't stopped thinking about it. I grew up in Harbor Springs. I'm going to start by talking about myself a bit so you know why I'm in this building and why I'm doing this stuff. So I grew up in Harbor Springs. I moved here when I was 10. And in 8th grade, I had the best English teacher in the state. His name still is, Tom Blank. And Tom Blank had us write a paper on what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I wanted to be a historian. And I did my research. I went to historychannel.com. I went to the message boards and I asked the historian, should I be a historian? What's your advice? And they said, don't do it. There's only jobs in museums or teaching history, and they're few and far between. So I landed on documentary filmmaker because I really enjoyed the History Channel and I love movies. So in high school, I started making fun little movies at high school with all my friends and the teachers. I made my first documentary there about the weight room. Then I went to college, to film school. I did that sort of thing. I learned how to make movies there. And then I moved to Boston after college. And I got a job at a documentary filmmaking company where we did movies for TV, for theater, and also museum media, which is really fun. I got to make the media you see in museums. So being in this building feels right because it feels like a museum. When I was in Boston, my very first film I ever worked on was about a gangster named Whitey Bulger. And Whitey Bulger is probably the most famous gangster from Boston. And we were doing the film for the Mob Museum and for Discovery because he got caught right when and we started the film right away, right after he got caught. And he was that was how I first got my beak wet into filmmaking. And Discovery loved the movie and they asked us for another one. And the director looked at me and said, go find another movie, another Boston crime movie. So I Googled, unsolved Boston crime and landed on Boston Strangler. And in my research, I found a new suspect, never talked about in film, television, or in book, which is very important when you're pitching a movie to someone. They want an exclusive. And so we had a new suspect from New York, and we started asking the State Department and the Boston police about it. And they reopened a 50-year-old cold case about a serial killer. So that was really exciting for me. I was a kid, right out of college, and I got to do that. And I've dove right in. So we did a 2-hour doc for Discovery, and the documentary, as we were doing it, they reopened the case, as I said, and they proved it was their suspect and not mine. We can get into the details of that, but not today. What ended up happening is we got another gig to do a 12-episode podcast where we could talk about my suspect more. And then Hollywood made a movie about it starring Keira Knightley, and I got a call. And that continually happens whenever someone's writing a book or making a movie. Tay gets a call if it's about the Strangler. But today we're not talking about the Boston Strangler, but I'm here to tell you that everything I learned doing films like that has brought me here. Because when I was a 14-year-old boy and I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker, I told myself I would make a movie about the ponytail. And here we are today. So I've been filming a documentary for over a year now with a bunch of awesome local people. People on my team are Teeny Stillings, Nate Graham, Emma Spencer, Kim Offenhauser. I'd like to thank Tim Offenhauser, the new caretaker and owner of this beautiful gangster club, for letting us shoot in here today. This is a poster for my film. It's called Ponytails. It's about two truly different clubs in Harbor Springs, Michigan, yet they're under the same roof. I call it Ponytails because it all started with the stories that I heard from Tom and Ward and all these ponytail teenagers, I call them, growing up here in Harbor Springs. But the stories of young love and rock and roll quickly evolved into tales of gangsters, booze, gambling, and Detroit's very own Purple Gang, hence the purple in the presentation. To put it simply, Club Ponytail would not exist if it weren't for Club Manitou and those dirty, rotten gangsters. So in doing all this research for all this other crap I did, I've gotten very good at research. And this is where we start. I'm just going to give you a little taste of how the hell do we learn more about a club that's so hush-hush and it's a literal speakeasy? Like, how am I supposed to learn more about that? So when I was in college, I had a great professor of guitar, and he was teaching me bluegrass guitar. And he said, if you ever want to master the bluegrass guitar, you have to know where the bodies are buried. What does that mean? He meant you have to study the greats. You have to know how they play in order for you to improve upon it or improvise even. So this story is about a Jewish mob-run casino, a very successful one. How did they learn how to do this? If you literally go to Google and type in Jewish gangster casino, one name pops up, and that is Meyer Lansky. Oh, I've kind of changed the presentation. We're going to watch a little bit of a movie here. Not mine, but it's archival. So I started consuming every book, documentary, news article, and FOIA about this man. He is not in the Purple Gang. He's just the greatest Jewish gangster to ever do it. But when you start reading more about him, you learn that he's very good friends with the Purple Gang. In fact, he owns a business with them. So we are going to watch this real quick. It's about 10 minutes, but it will tell you who Meyer Lansky is, and then I will give you some more context. Can you hear this?
He was a remarkable man whose life spanned a remarkable segment of American history and society. One of the most unusual things about him was that he lived long enough to die in a hospital bed of cancer and the complications of his 80 years. So many of his contemporaries, sometimes at his order or with his consent, died so much younger in terribly violent ways. Lansky's death, in many respects, marks the end of an era. The Godfather movies are great American classics, not only for marvelous writing, acting, and directing.
Oh my God.
But for explaining how organized crime was conceived and nurtured in 20th century America. Across the entire breadth of organized crime's history, from the early Prohibition days in New York City to Havana before Castro to the glitter of Las Vegas, Meyer Lansky was there, in the shadows, as mediator, accountant, advisor to the mob. Al Pacino, as the Godfather, comes to Miami to meet with the family's casino consultant. The house, the neighborhood, the television turned up to shield their conversation from FBI bugs, all are taken exactly from the real life of Meyer Lansky. He was born Meyer Suchaljansky in Grodno, Russia. He came to Ellis Island with his parents in 1911 as part of that massive immigrant wave of Eastern Europeans. As a boy, he came to know the Italians, who would later become the bosses of the American Mafia. Yet Lansky was more powerful, more influential than any of them in shaping the destiny and enormous success of the National Crime Syndicate, America's largest single business. His position is even more astounding when you realize that as a Russian-born Jew, he can never be a member of that inner circle of organized crime, the Italian Mafia. He was a brilliant man who may have understood human nature better than Freud. A practical man of enormous self-control who, with patience and planning and cunning, manipulated people and fortunes and entire governments. He may have been worth $1 billion by the time he died, but he was so good at shifting and hiding money, his investments may never be found. He drove a leased Chevrolet. Because he used sex and greed to get what he wanted from others, he never let himself develop those kinds of appetites or vulnerability. For him, money meant power and winning. He left school after the 8th grade. Always small for his age, he learned to survive on the streets of New York with his wits. First a floating crap game, then a car repair shop that specialized in changing serial numbers on stolen cars and souping up Model Ts so they could outrun the police. With Prohibition, he formed the Bugs and Meyer mob. Their specialty was guarding shipments of bootleg whiskey smuggled in from Canada and the Bahamas. That was Lansky's first mediation job, trying to persuade the gangs they could make more money if they cooperated and ran their bootlegging like a business instead of constant street warfare. The bribe, he kept saying, is much more effective than the bullet. His partner in the Bugs and Meyer mob was Bugsy Siegel, a handsome ladies' man. In the spring of 1934, shortly after Prohibition ended, there was a national crime syndicate meeting. With liquor legal, they had to decide what their next ventures would be. Bugsy Siegel was sent to Nevada, where gambling had just been legalized. Lansky's assignment was the Southeast, particularly South Florida and the Caribbean. Lansky had gone to Cuba in the early 1930s to begin a friendship with Cuban President Fulgencio Batista. The mob needed a supply of Cuban molasses for their distilleries. Lansky made the arrangements with Batista. By 1937, Lansky was living in Cuba. He ran the casino at the Nacional Hotel and the Havana racetrack. When World War II shut down Havana tourism, Lansky moved to Broward County, where he began buying property that could be developed as nightclubs, hotels, casinos. Lansky never saw military service, but in the middle of World War II, he was tapped for one of the war's deep undercover assignments. Lucky Luciano, the most powerful of the New York Mafia bosses, was in prison. The OSS, later to become the CIA, approached Lansky, asking him to negotiate with Luciano. They needed Luciano's underworld connections to provide espionage intelligence on the New York docks and to prepare for the invasion of Sicily. Lansky arranged the deal. In return for the mob's help, Luciano was paroled and deported shortly after the war ended. In the late 1940s, Lansky achieved his first real power in the mob. His nightclubs and casinos lit up the skies in South Broward County. Bugsy Siegel opened the first hotel casino in Las Vegas, the Flamingo. But Siegel began to consider the Flamingo his own possession. He became erratic. The mob met and sentenced him to die. The night before a meeting with Lansky in Beverly Hills, Siegel was shot in the face as he sat in the living room of his movie star girlfriend. 20 minutes later, Lansky's people moved into the Flamingo to announce they were the new managers. South Florida became Las Vegas East. The biggest entertainers in the country starred at Lansky's old Colonial Inn across the street from Gulfstream Racetrack. Casinos were illegal, but law enforcement did nothing about it. Most law enforcement officers were friends of Lansky. Some had become rich, investing in mob-backed businesses. Early in his life, Lansky had learned never to deal with anyone who would not accept a gift or a favor. In 1950, the Miami Herald ran a long series of stories showing organized crime's connection to the South Florida casinos and law enforcement's ties to Lansky. The Herald won a Pulitzer Prize, and Senator Estes Kefauver, until then virtually unknown, brought his investigations committee to Miami. The hearings were an immediate audience success. So successful, Kefauver went nationwide with his investigation and became famous enough to run for president.
I'm not going to answer another question. You just says I'm not under arrest and I'm going to walk out.
While Lansky was running his casinos in South Florida, Batista was thrown out of Cuba. So when the South Florida casinos shut down, Lansky went back to Cuba to arrange for Batista's return. In 1952, Batista and the army seized power, and Lansky could have almost anything he wanted, so long as Batista got a piece of the action. In late 1957, New York Mafia boss Albert Anastasia argued the mob had let Lansky become too powerful in the Havana casino operations. It was a simple business decision. Anastasia, one of the most feared men in organized crime, was shot out of his barber's chair in New York's Park Sheraton Hotel. Lansky's power was complete. When Castro shut down the casinos, Lansky moved to Allendale to supervise the development of casinos all over the world. When the first casino in the Bahamas opened at Freeport's La Cayenne Beach Hotel, all of those in management positions were old Lansky cronies. Much of Lansky's time in the early 1960s was spent supervising from Miami the skimming operations in Las Vegas casinos. Lansky became public enemy number one for a task force of FBI and IRS agents. They bugged casino counting rooms, secretly opened courier suitcases. In 1971, Lansky and two prominent Miami Beach hotel men were indicted for conspiring to skim $14 million from the Flamingo in Las Vegas. Lansky fled to Israel, but American law enforcement authorities applied so much pressure, Israel deported him. He flew almost around the world looking for asylum, reportedly offering $1 million to any ruler who would take him in. All refused, and Lansky returned here to be charged with contempt of court and income tax evasion. The skimming charge was dismissed after the Las Vegas bugs were ruled illegal. An appellate court overturned the contempt conviction. A jury found him not guilty of tax evasion. Lansky moved into semi-retirement in a Miami Beach condo. After open-heart surgery, he was less active, but the mob still came for advice and counsel. In 1977, his stepson, Richard Schwartz, killed a mobster's son in a fight in a Miami Beach bar. A few weeks after Schwartz was released on bond, he was executed in retaliation. Law enforcement officers speculated that Lansky was told in advance that his stepson would be killed. It was a matter of simple respect. He would understand and accept. To run a casino, you have to know how to get along with people. At that, Lansky was superb. He had 3 ulcers, but on the surface, he was friendly, soft-spoken, easygoing. If you need a favor, come see me. Anything to help a friend. Scores of businesses in South Florida would not be here today if Lansky had not been there to help with a small business loan. Dozens of political careers depended on his money and connections. It was an offer they couldn't refuse, and they often returned the favor. He was a man of his word. A deal was a deal. 15 years ago, I asked him, when are you going to write your memoirs? He put on his best smile and said, there's nothing to write about. You guys make up all that stuff. But I know of no character in fiction who lived through as much intrigue in so many places with so many people as Meyer Lansky. On Miami Beach, I'm Clarence Jones, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
All right. Thanks for watching that. It kind of felt like school again. All right. So Meyer Lansky, why are we even talking about him? He's on the Purple Gang. Well, the money behind Club Manitou was a man named Abe Bernstein, the leader of the Purple Gang. And it just so happens that Meyer Lansky and Abe Bernstein are very old friends and business partners on a casino at the same time as the Manitou down in Florida, if you caught it, called the Colonial Inn, which is a familiar name to anyone from Harbor Springs. According to one gangster in 1971 Senate hearings, gambling is the most important activity for organized crime, and Meyer Lansky is the biggest man in the casino gambling business. This book is very good. If you want to learn anything about Meyer, read this book. I read that book, of course. This is a great book to read if you want to learn more about Meyer Lansky and the other gangsters that are up north by our friend Robert Knapp. Unfortunately, he passed away right before we started this film. But He was a really neat guy and really enthusiastic about this story. I'm a documentarian. That's why I showed you archival. That was the easiest way for me to explain to you who Meyer Lansky was. I care about primary sources as a documentarian, and one of my favorite places to get information from is our own federal government through a FOIA, or a Freedom of Information Act. And since 1966, the Freedom of Information Act provides the public the right to request records from any federal agency. And boy, does the FBI know me. The FBI website where they upload their greatest hits of FOIA requests is called the FBI Vault. Now, I'm a documentarian and I'm a nerd. I just want primary sources. So I went to the vault and I typed in Harbor Springs. And look who popped up. Meyer Lansky. What is he doing up here in Harbor Springs? Meyer Lansky was known as the accountant to the mob. He was the top dog. We all know this now. We watched this. He also invested some of his time and money in Michigan, but you wouldn't know it. This is from one of the FOIAs on Meyer Lansky. It says, I love this. He stated he fully intends to travel to Tacoma, Washington if he is not in jail after the 1st of June, 1970, and indicated he was confident he would not be in jail. He stated he then planned to visit Ohio and Michigan. However, he did not wish for any newspapers or law enforcement agencies to be notified. The bottom is great. No promises were made to Lansky, and he apparently expects none. And even though Meyer Lansky did not want the feds following him on his trips to Michigan, they did. I'm going to read this to you because it reads like a scene out of a movie, which I happen to be making one of those. Subject and wife departed Clare, Michigan in his car 11:30 a.m. September 3, drove at speeds reaching 85 miles an hour to Gaylord, Michigan, where he left the main highway north, and neither he nor his car has been seen since. No reservations known to have been made on Mackinac Island in the subject's name, nor has his car been left in Mackinac City or St. Ignace, from whence he would travel by boat to Mackinac Island. Stops on car at Mackinac and Port Huron bridges, negative. Checks of hotels and motels along indirect scenic route via Petoskey to Mackinac, negative, aka the Tunnel of Trees. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Meyer Lansky in Harbor Springs. On September 5, last subject and wife toured Mackinac Island and returned to Mackinac City on ferry. They drove to Birchwood Farm Lodge, now known as Otis Hotel, located near Harbor Springs, Michigan, where they are presently staying and is believed they were staying prior to their visit to Mackinac Island. Subject observed this date and was playing golf this morning. That sounds nice. All right. So we found his business partner and we kind of know his whole spiel here. We just got his whole obituary. But where did Meyer learn how to do it? I had this great moment when we were outside the club with Chris and Rick about a year ago now, where we're standing there and Rick Wiles goes, how'd they know how to do this? How did they learn this? Well, how did Meyer learn to do it? In terms of casino, Meyer Lansky, here, I'm going to stay here real quick. In terms of casinos, Meyer Lansky cut his teeth in Saratoga Springs, New York in the 1920s under the tutelage of the notorious gambler Arnold Rothstein. Nicknamed the Big Bankroll, Rothstein was famous for fixing the 1919 World Series. It was in Saratoga Springs where Lansky perfected the carpet joint. Houses along Lake Saratoga were transformed into fancy restaurants on the first floor with decorative carpets to muffle the sounds of casinos, and the back rooms are in the basements, hence carpet joint. Exactly like Club Manitou, but Abe Bernstein and Al Gerhardt weren't originally from Harbor Springs. So how does one open a successful speakeasy in a new town? I've studied Meyer Lansky and Arnold Rothstein and their school of gambling, and here are the rules I've gathered in order to successfully open and operate a speakeasy casino. First is high-end dining and entertainment to keep the butts and the wallets in the seats. And if you read Club Manitou by Mark Huck, which is a great book, and you should all read it, do your homework, the Gerhardts prided themselves with the reputation of Club Manitou as being the store club of the North. Everything that could be imported from New York was, including champagne, lobsters, chef, And they had live music every day downstairs in the casino. Hold on. The other rule, wealthy clients only, or as it's known in this town, no locals allowed at the Manitou. I always was bummed out when I heard that, but there's a good reason. No townsfolk were allowed, so all the local bills and tabs would be paid and businesses would remain happy. So no locals were permitted to come and gamble at the Manitou. Only wealthy families from the Point, Weequahic, Bayview, other summer communities. Chris mentioned this earlier, but there were reports, at least at the Ramona Park Casino, of two brothers losing $100,000 in one night, which would have been 2.3 million today. That's a good chunk of change. And then Gerhardt, I did hear one story of him letting a friend gamble and them losing a ton of money and him paying it back and telling him summer people only. And when you read into Meyer Lansky's FOIA, you learn about these rules. And here I'm going to swear because this is a college. So if there's any kids, please. I said, what the fuck side do you know of me? Was I a thief? Sure, I was a gambler. My doors were as wide open as a Fontainebleau hotel, but it didn't take in a poor, unfortunate worker. It took in a class of people that could afford it. Nobody was forced to gamble or to come there. Your fucking reformers that came there ate my food, and your newspaper man and many big officials, they didn't pay their fucking check. If it was so terrible, why the hell didn't they pay their fucking check? I love this because it's his voice. You're hearing Meyer Lansky telling you his rule right there. And one of the next rules is in that rule, which is befriend and pay off all the local police, prosecutors, and politicians. Of course he didn't want him paying their bills. They owe him. So in talking to some local legends, one of the people that were mentioned was Meryl Hankey, and she told me about how when Al Gerhardt, the casino operator and on paper owner of this place, was in retirement over at Emmett County Care Facility, him and the judge and the sheriff used to share stories and talk about the old days. So they were still friends. Gerhardt, as was mentioned before, even put the judge through law school. And the state police were kept at bay by this high-ranking GOP politician named John Galster. That's a good local politician to know. We might get into him if we have time. And if Gerhardt's second casino that was mentioned earlier in West Virginia was any indication, he was paying the cops there $35,000 annually, which is $350,000 annually. Now, I haven't heard of any bribes in Harbor, but we're learning. And then this is about the Colonial Inn in outside Miami, not the one in Harbor, but that's the other Abe Bernstein casino. And it was policed so well that the sheriff said he provided special policing for Lansky's illegal gambling establishments, but also deputized the men who drove armored cars and carrying cash from the casinos to the bank. That's pretty cool for the casino. Be friendly with the press. This one's great. So no news is good news for an illegal casino. Don't be hostile with the press is like a classic gangster one. But if they don't play ball, then you can kill them. But no one died in Harbor Springs, don't worry. In fact, I'm going to skip ahead. The Manitou loved the local paper. Here they are congratulating the Graphic for achieving 75 years of progressive journalism. And actually, Al Gerhardt was a little local celebrity in the paper in his older years, feeding the geese around his moat around his what is called his moated mansion that's still out on Crooked Lake. My favorite rule, this has got to be the best rule of all these gangsters' rules, is give back to the community. So if you're coming into a town like Harbor and you're opening up an illegal gambling place, you're going to want to make sure people are happy. So you do some charity work, you give back to the community. And Lansky said, host the area dances for the kids or charity balls or fundraisers. And one of the things that happened here that's so awesome was the Indian naming ceremony. Used to be a big deal back in the day. This is the reason we had the Ottawa Stadium is for the Indian princess or the Indian naming ceremony. And they held dinners here for that event at the Manitou. Al Gerhardt and his wife Jean gave back to the Bay Bluffs Emmett County Care Facility quite a bit. Jean spent a lot of her life dedicated to helping that place. Another one from the Gerhardts is the Atlanton Hillside Garden. And of course, my favorite, the Ponytail. That's the best way to get back to the community. It's a teen nightclub. Are you kidding me? Here's some of the Indian naming ceremony at the club. This is great because these are some of the few photos we have of the interior. On the left, they're down in the basement. You can tell by the window, the fake window. Who knows? On the right here, they're out in the yard, probably standing over tunnels. Again, in the yard. I like this photo because it looks like the piano is outside. Someone brought a piano outside. Here is Gene Gerhardt, front and center, groundbreaking on a new part of the building for the Emmett County Care Facility, which is, as we all know, this, right next to the new skate park. That flagpole has a plaque dedicated to her. She was a really, really awesome woman. She was the one actually who sent the package to Al that he shot it up. She was actually courting him. The story goes, she was trying to get his attention. And he did. She did. She definitely did. The Alanson Hillside Garden, Al Gerhardt, after he passed, donated $50,000 as an endowment. So anytime you drive by this garden, you can thank the Dirty Rotten Purple Gangsters. And of course, the ponytail. We would not have the ponytail without these gangsters. There's a lot more to that story that I probably don't have time to get into right now, but as you know, that the ponytail burnt down in 1969. I do have time to dive into this last part about Petoskey, I think.
Yeah.
How much time do I have? And how much? Do I got like 10 more minutes? I think so. All right. So again, I'm a documentarian and I get really obsessive over this stuff. And I've been wanting to do this for 20 years. So one of the rules was befriend a local politician. And they did. It was this guy named John Galster. And this FOIA, they say that he kept the police at bay, the state police at bay. So who is local insurance man John L.A. Galster? Okay, just if there's any Galsters in here, this is all I know about your descendant, so don't come at me here. John L.A. Galster. He was an insurance man, but he organized and was the treasurer of Petoskey Portland Cement, which is a really big company here that we all probably now know as Bay Harbor. In 1921 to 25, he was the mayor of Petoskey. In 1937, he was made president of Petoskey Portland Cement. In 55, Petoskey Portland Cement sold to Penn-Dixie. And later, in his later years, he donated time and money to the conservation and to hospital, Little Traverse Hospital, actually. So we all know Petoskey Portland Cement. It is Bay Harbor. It was once a cement quarry, and now it's a beautiful resort area. These photos are courtesy of one of my best friends, Carla Buckmaster, and her website, northernmishmash.weebly.com. It is the best resource up here for our local history, and she's just a killer at it. I wrote a note here. I forgot to ask you permission, Carla. Please don't kill me. But these are from her website. I just have never seen these photos before. It's wild to see, this cement company. I mean, I worked here as a lifeguard at the yacht club, but I worked down in that quarry. I've never seen it like that. There's one thing I forgot to include. I almost forgot this. He poured the tunnels at the Manitou in 1928. How could I know this? I didn't infer it because he was in that FBI FOIA. I know this because they left their logo. They left their logo on a tunnel. And this is so great because it's like undeniable that they put it there. And that's a pretty big deal. So who is John L.A. Galster besides the cement company owning insurance salesman? Well, he was a high-ranking GOP politician. And if you start reading about John Galster, you quickly learn that he's a really big deal in politics. For example, if someone was considering to run for a political office and they flew north to visit Galster and they landed in that airport right across the street, the paper the next day would say, so-and-so is definitely running for office. He just went and met with Galster. So that airport across the street that I just mentioned, the Harbor Springs Airport, it was built the same time as this. And as many people have heard the rumor, there's a tunnel from here to there. I haven't been in it yet. But I was researching a lot about the comings and goings of the opening of this airport. And right after this airport opened, this article was written for the paper. And boy, did I love it, because this is what I love doing. It's an article full of names I could go research. And so I highlighted the ones that matter just for tonight. All of them matter. They're all kind of little corrupt guys, but they're Detroit businessmen, according to the paper. And they'll be guests of John L.A. Galster. And the name that popped up right away is this one, William Comstock. Who is William Comstock? He's the future governor of Michigan. And if you look at when he is governor, it's right when Prohibition ends. And he's landing in the airport in Harbor Springs, I don't know, the date 29. All right, so he's been up here. Just saying hi. If you want to learn more about William Comstock and his relationship with the Purple Gang and Meyer Lansky and all these little gangsters, you just got to read Robert Knapp's book about it. The Minion of the Mob. This will tell you all of this. I'm about to just throw in your face. But William Comstock, I've read about him in this book. He was an investor in this company called Garfield Owner, and he was brought in by his friends and owners, Sam Garfield and Isaiah Lebo. These were two of the owners. It's a complicated story, so I'll keep it brief, but they weren't the only owners. There were some other owners of this oil and gas company. Our friend Meyer Lansky, of course. Two of the Bernstein brothers, which are the OG Purple Gangsters. They were also part of this venture. So was this guy, Jack Livingston, but he was a mess and a drunk. But he made it much easier. He made things much easier and wealthier for our gangsters when he killed Isaiah Lebo. And then they all absorbed his percentages. They all own more of this company, including that governor. Whatever his motive, it's unclear, but that's a good motive to make everyone wealthier. Isaiah Lebo killed this guy. It gets really complicated. It gets really messy, so I won't go into it. But as you do research into this company and these men that landed at the airport and these men that own this corrupt oil company, you start reading about the top dog, which is this guy named Frank McKay. And basically, Frank McKay was handling the rollout of the liquor licenses and doing it like a gangster or a politician. He was favoring his friends, his Republican distilleries, and some other classic quid pro quo stuff. And just the other day, we learned from Charlie Brown, our friend, Anonymous, that Gerhard got the first liquor license in the state of Michigan after the end of Prohibition, according to Gerhard himself. So it's not a surprise. All these guys landed in the airport in 1929. But at the end of these articles, you find this other mention of our friend again, Galster, John Galster and his brother Henry. And this is where I just love it. Ties a nice bow on it. They are doing quid pro quo stuff where they get all of the government contracts. And it's just like in the movies, when you think of a mafia-run cement company, we got one here in Petoskey. But of course, when this went to court, nothing stuck. Classic Teflon gangster stuff. It all gets thrown out. That happens a lot with the Purple Gang, although there was a jury tampering investigation into this. Our gangsters walked away clean. There are many others. Okay, I already said that part. All right, we're almost done, folks. I love this photo. Thank you, Carla. That's just a peek into how you can start to understand a building like this. Like, how do you learn more about this? It's not written down anywhere. You just have to follow these leads and learn, not just like, when was Al Gerhard born and when did he die? You have to look alongside he's working with, and kind of you start to be able to understand this place a lot better. I like to say thank you to some people. I know this is only a small portion of this story. If you can see me, behind us is what I call my timeline. Other people call it a murder board. It's not a murder board, it's a timeline. But if you guys can look, I've put up every single date and story that has to do with the Manitou and our gangsters and everything that has to do with the ponytail. And it's all up on a wall in the building, and it's really helping us understand the story more. And it's a real joy when people come over and they ask me questions about it. And one of those people is Carla Buckmaster. She sat in this room with me for a long time, and we've been on the phone late at night talking about these stories. And she's such a joy to have as a friend and a very, very talented researcher and storyteller. Meryl Hankey, if you're out there watching, I love you. She has given me so many stories on Al. I can't even begin to thank you. Thank you, Meryl. Rick Wiles, of course, and Chris Struble, the Club Manitou historians, as I call them. I emailed Rick Wiles like 11 years ago about this story, and I finally got around to it. So these guys are always so great at picking up and talking about this stuff when people ask. And I'm just so grateful of people like that who share this story, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be telling this story until I'm dead, and I'm going to want as many people to hear it so I can get more stories out of you guys. Yeah, we can switch to questions. Thank you so much. I also have some more. I don't know how to
Thanks,
do that.
Chris and Taylor. If anybody has a question, you can go ahead and write that in the chat.
The chat. There it is. Hi, guys.
Or I guess go ahead too and feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you've got one.
Yes, if you have questions, I'm very good at answering questions. I can, as people are thinking of questions. How about this? I mean, it's 10 minutes.
So can I ask you a question? This is Jenny.
Yes, of course.
So
please.
have the families who have been on the point for forever, have you been able to interview any of the grandparents for instance?
Hold on, I'm trying to find you. Hi. I've talked to so many people in this town, hundreds of people. I've had a few of them sit down in front of a camera. I've recorded audio-wise a lot of our conversations. A lot of people that come have a story, they come and they say, oh, it's not much, I don't have a big story, but like once you sit down and start talking, a lot of stories come out. So I encourage people to come to me and tell me stories. Some of the stories I heard about the Point people this summer were, I gave one Point family a tour, and then she said, oh yeah, Al used to bring bottles of booze to my grandparents. I would hear these stories my whole life. And I talked to one woman from Crooked Lake, and she started telling me other gangster stories I'd never heard of before. And like, I don't know, I guess, yeah, I'm still a student, as Chris says, and I want to hear as many as possible. So,
And it's fun when those stories overlap too and corroborate each other. And that's like, you find, then the truth comes out, and that's always been the best part of these presentations. I learned something at every presentation I've ever done. I've been doing Hemingway tours for 23 years, and there's not one tour I've ever done where I haven't learned something myself.
Someone's asking here, does anyone remember Gig Stewart's involvement in the ponytail?
I don't know the ponytail. I have heard that name a lot. People have told me about him a lot. I thought maybe Gig had more to do with the Golden Horseshoe, and
there was another club that was associated with the property, the Golden Horseshoe, which more of a burlesque entertainment gentleman's club, maybe even almost on the property here. That's where the township, where everybody would have voted it from Harbor Springs 2 nights ago. And the Golden Horseshoe often gets confused with being the club Manitou. And I was one of those people that originally was looking for that. So that name I haven't heard associated with the ponytail at this time, but
I've heard it with that property.
With the Golden
It was
Horseshoe,
a really big deal, actually. It's really hard to remember all the really badass people in this town.
Someone mentioned that they'd like a list of the websites and books that were referenced in the presentation. And I will mention that this has been recorded and will go out to everybody. So if anybody wants to refer back to it and look at the books and websites, that'll be easy to do.
Yeah, and Robert Knapp's books are great. There is a little bit of irony, though. Just before Robert passed away, the last book he was working on was the fact that the Purple Gang never existed. So he wrote some of the definitive books about the Purple Gang, and actually came from Clare, Michigan, where there was a murder, and the Purple Gang were very dominant and well known. And then at the end of his life, he was trying to prove that the Purple Gang never existed. It's kind of funny, but it's still, his books are great and full of definitive information.
Okay, someone's asking, is the house that's located back in the woods to the south of the airport connected with Club Manitou's underground?
Are they talking about the house you've been to?
I believe if it's the house by where Johan's is now, by the Conservancy there was another gambling establishment there. That building, I've been inside of it. If that's the house they're talking about, that was a really creepy experience. I'm an urban explorer. I grew up in Traverse City with a state hospital, so urban exploration has been one of my passions. I've even been to Chernobyl, which not many people have been to Chernobyl. That's where all my hair went. But we were in that building years before, and then it came out that house definitely was owned by Gerhardt and would be used for games periodically. So that's in the woods just south of where the gas station is there, where you would turn up to go to Dueweke if you were coming past Vernalles, close proximity to that coming up the hill. So there was another house back there that we are pretty sure was definitely associated with Gerhardt and gambling.
Okay, and why did Al choose Harbor Springs to build a speakeasy?
I can tell you what I
think there's one reason.
I think, to my knowledge, it seems like Abe Bernstein was already summering up here in Petoskey. So these gangsters, much like anyone else that summers here, were already coming here, and there's a lot of money left on the table. There's a lot of money to be had. There's a lot of money that floats into Little Traverse Bay every summer, and they weren't going to leave money on the table. So they built this.
And then that money goes home, and the story kind of dies down for 6 months, and then
this is not the one thing about Club Manitou is, there's other spots in the country that actually Saratoga Springs, White Sulphur Springs, Harbor Springs. There's all these resort towns, and they all have casinos like this, and they all are kind of owned by the same people in the end.
Okay, was Duffy's the same building?
Duffy's was the township building, which was the Golden Horseshoe, which was we didn't get into in this presentation.
Okay, and then just somebody mentioning here that their aunt shared stories about going to the Pony Club when they were younger. And I'm not.
Those are the stories that Taylor was really, really looking for, also for the ponytails. The talk tonight obviously was dominated mostly by gangsters and the original genesis of the building. But we're definitely
we're still gathering those tales. A lot of them are really sweet. Like, I was at the Graham Real Estate office, and a woman, we were like, "You ever been to the Ponytail?" She goes, "Oh my God, I think of Jack's cologne, and I still smell it sometimes. I think of seeing, who was it? I forgot."
And I had a lady tell me she used a fake ID, came in here and met her future husband. Another friend, her brother, who's well known around town. I don't want to say their names, but her brother snuck her in for her first time at the Ponytail. And then again, like my friend Denny, who's a musician in Traverse City, he used to tell me stories. He was actually in the Graphic, in a retro edition of the Graphic. He was a famous drummer up here when he was 14 years old. He was the house band here at the Ponytails, and then they would get in trouble for sneaking around and coming down into the old Manitou section. And there would be jam sessions down there on the old stage. Also, it said that the Beach Boys, after hours, after their gig, they played downstairs here on the stage, which is a small stage, but it's a bigger room for them to spread out to. It's funny, the Beach Boys were just at a private party in Bay Harbor a couple of years ago. They played for somebody's a private bash out there, and they said it's so great to be in Northern Michigan for the first time. And I was like, wait, we have the poster when the original Beach Boys, the real Beach Boys, were here in '63, I think, or '64.
I think it was 63.
63.
I do have like something I can show you guys if you want to. I do have like a little video of me going in the basement we could show with my amazing intern Emma. We shot it the other day.
If there's a time, Christy, would
do a little virtual?
No, that's fine. If people want to jump off, they can jump off. If people want to stay on, they can.
For those that may not be coming out here on Saturday for an in-person tour, maybe they'd like to see a little of the infrastructure. I showed a couple pictures of me creeping around, but
yeah, it's cool. I think it'd be fun because the problem with talks like this is it's so hard to tell you everything within an hour. But that's the point of a movie. So that's something to look forward to. I do want to plug Mark Huck's book again, Club Manitou, How to Build, Operate a 1920s Speakeasy. I can't recall the exact
title. I think
is
the only place to find that at the Historical Society here in Harbor Springs.
Yeah, or Amazon. And then Mark and I are working on, I'm going to write all of my thoughts down into a book. And so talks like these will get a little more easier to do once it's all out of my system. It's all up there, but it all needs to be in a book. So me and Mark are working on that too. There's a lot of fun stuff going on.
Somebody said here too, I think there may be a tunnel at the east end of the runway. Is that where you think it might be?
North, south, east, and west. We found tunnels definitely down very close to 119, and I can't tell you how many people with very, very good recall and are absolutely positive and convinced that they were in tunnels that went down at least as far. This one gentleman told me, I know we were down at least as far as the airport. And then there's a story that when they were clearing off the property over there for some of the new houses, that they uncovered the reciprocal entrances or exits from the airport. So that's been and that's the one thing about rumors and stories like this, is that after you hear it so many times, there tends to be some truth to it, you know. And we've uncovered more than what we were even hoping for so far.
Okay. As Chris mentioned, we are hosting some tours at the site on Saturday. There's a few spaces left, and I did put the link in the chat, or reach out to me too if you want information. We're closing registration, I think, first thing tomorrow morning. So if you want to register, you should do that. I'm not seeing any other questions here.
We can thank everybody, and then we can run that video if anybody wants to stay late with us and watch that.
It's what you probably were waiting for, I guess. You'll get to see more than what we've told you.
I thank everybody for joining in tonight for such a topic that's been a passion of mine for years now. I was so excited the first time I made it in.
Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to play this video. I think it should be fine. I mean, I think it should work fine. Can you still see? They can still see my screen, right? Yeah. Yes. All right. So I call this the 10-second tour. I'm very fortunate to be working with a young lady named Emma Spencer. She's this rock star filmmaker. She's only 16. She's a student at the high school where I teach. Open link. And so this is always my favorite shot. I got the place in peak season here.
It's such a beautiful, peaceful place. It's hard to sit here and then think about all of the nefarious activity that's gone on in the building over the years.
Yeah, the beauty of it is a casino. So I think it was more like pleasure than like actual crime. I'm gonna maybe mute it because there's a lot of me just saying random stuff, and I'll talk over. How do I mute it? Okay, thank God. All right, I'm gonna talk over the imagery. So this is from the front yard looking at the Manitou. It looks like a house. So earlier I said Saratoga Springs, New York. They based this off of there's two styles of casino there. One looks like a cottage retrofitted to be a casino. The other looks like a traditional casino like the Ramona Park Casino. But this was custom built to look like this. Here I am at the entrance to the courtyard of the Ponytail, and I'm pointing out this says Saturday night admission, $1.50. And kids would walk through there into the courtyard. If you don't remember the courtyard and you tell me that never existed, then you went to the Ponytail from 1962 to 64. Because the thing was there. I almost cut myself on this Prohibition era bottle. Go Rams. We don't know what it is. It looks like the first floor of a teen nightclub, but we're not sure what's underneath it. I'm very grateful to have made friends with some awesome people at Nukmuk in the archaeology department, and they are going to come and teach me and show me what to do here.
Yeah, and also LSSU, Lake Superior State University, came out and did some ground penetrating radar and corroborated some of the stuff we had known about. They only did a section of the property, but my favorite part is when they found the tunnel that goes from the garage into the downstairs. And when Mark Huck showed me that section, there was actually on the conveyor belt section there was an empty case for high-end champagne out of New York.
So this is the end of what is the only tunnel that Judy ever admitted existed. It's called the Waiters Tunnel, and it was built to connect the original Club Manitou to the bigger, newer building called the Pavilion, which is what everyone knows as Club Ponytail. That's what burnt down. So now I'm saying, come on, Emma. This is the outdoor stage. It was a gloomy day. I'm sorry. It doesn't look beautiful today, but That's the reality of it.
And it's authentic.
And this is where the ponytail used to be. That's what I'm saying to Emma. Look at this beautiful ponytail. It was right there. The girl was there. And then I do a cute little iMovie thing here where that's what the ponytail looks like.
And like you said, there's so few pictures that
I know this is like the main photo of it, until we find more. So here I am unlocking the door down to the basement. And this is the entrance to a speakeasy. This is what it looks like.
He's passing where the jail door would have been hung.
Now I'm yelling, cut it, Emma. But she got the shot. It's so much better. And that was a great shot, Emma.
He's standing right where the
so the Landis family, I didn't get to talk about them much, but Judy and Keen Landis, I'm just so grateful for them for saving this,
preserving it.
Yeah. Beautiful shot, Emma. That's the downstairs stage. So this is a story you were just telling. But when the Beach Boys played, they had a lousy first set. Then they went downstairs and played on this stage. This was the Ponytail. Some people forget because they were just teenagers then, but they were partying down here. This is the lower level stage. There I am serving a drink. That's
about where the
sorry, I forgot to talk about the Manitou now that we're in here. So when it was the Manitou, obviously live music. That room was for dancing. This was the gambling room. And I'm saying right over here, this is where everyone gambled. And then this is the bar, and this is where they clean the glass, and that's what I'm doing here. Here you go. Anyway, here I'm talking about the backlit windows. It's classic casino stuff. They just don't want you to know what time of day it is, so you're down there longer. Here I'm telling you, just be mindful where you walk, because sometimes it's like hollow. And that is not a drain, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in a speakeasy casino. Great shot. I love it. Beautiful. Then we had to do some artsy stuff for you guys. And that isn't that great? There's the incinerator. You burn stuff down there. It goes up.
You could burn anything.
Actually, There's a great line where they're dedicating the Harbor Inn, which is the Ramona Park Hotel, and they ask Al Gerhardt, "Why do you have an incinerator in your club?" And he said, "Well, if we ever got raided, you could burn the layouts. You could burn pretty much anything."
That's the
This is the booze tunnel that goes under the sidewalk, and so it goes to the garage. And Al's first wife, she used to run booze. Here's the safe, and these are what we found in the incinerator. So they didn't burn it one last time. These are 1930s era Prohibition booze bottles from Canada.
One of them labeled by Hiram Walker, and then they'll say product. The bottle was manufactured in the USA, but the liquor was coming from was packaged in Canada. There's that sliding door again.
Yeah, this is the big door Chris was talking about. It's on rails. We had a lot of fun shooting this. I don't know if I included it. Yep, the shadows. It's a good eye. Emma was like, "We got to shoot this." And I'm playing with the shadows, and then we can freeze. All right, having fun down here. When the Ponytail was for sale, Nate Graham from Graham Real Estate called me and told me he knew I wanted to do this film. There I go. Oh, yeah, this is what we call the butt tunnel. Anyway, when Nate showed me the video of the property the first time, the only thing that really caught my eye was not the tunnels. It was the graffiti from the Ponytail teenagers in the bathroom, which we'll get to in a second here. Here I'm talking about, these are 5-inch, 6-inch concrete, steel reinforced doors. I'm saying I'm scared because the safe door fell off. I don't want to jiggle that one.
One mishap.
Yeah, we don't close doors in this club because we don't want them to not open. So there I am getting out of the butt tunnel, but this is what I cared about, coming to my bathroom. All the graffiti on the wall. Now, I've been down here, I photographed it. There's some great names in here. There's some local legends, some musical legends. We don't know if that's real or not, but Janis Joplin might have been here. Ed Swiss, I'm still looking for you, trying to get a hold of you. He is all over the walls down here. Ed Swiss was there he is again. People loved that man. Vicky and Nelson, they're cute. These are all nice. The girls' bathroom's much more creative than the boys' bathroom. I will say that. The boys' bathroom is a bit more graphic. Here I am walking through the casino. There's Landis again. Shout out to that family. We love them. And now we're doing some fun shots with Emma. Emma, please go walk down the waiter's tunnel. And so this is the only tunnel that exists according to Judy Landis, but I don't blame her, to be honest. We have one rule at the club here today, to this day, and it is do not burn down the club. We can't be the ones to do it. They tried, those gangsters tried to burn it down. There's some evidence. This is a great shot of Emma walking through to show you the terrain.
Yeah, if anybody joins the tour,
Yeah,
just wear good footwear.
know that this is what you're walking on in the waiter's tunnel. The rest are relatively clean.
You're not going to have to scoot down like Taylor did through the,
you don't
the
have
door
to do
backwards, but
that's only for the adventurous ones with good backs. But I will say, what was I going to say? They tried to burn it. Oh, I have another rule. I made a new rule for the club, Chris. Since we have these people on here, I'll tell you the rule. Do not come to the club uninvited. Don't just drive by and knock on the door. We have some issues with that. I love you. I love giving tours. Just reach out through our website, spiritofthemanitou.com, which is the nonprofit. Yeah, and here's the end of Slim's Tunnel. Now that I was warning you guys not to come look at this cool stuff. This is Slim's Tunnel. Right above our head was the Petoskey Portland Cement logo. And above our heads in general are all flower beds. So when you come to the house, invited, you'll see flower beds, and underneath all of them are these tunnels. And it's a neat way to keep people from walking on the tops of the tunnels, you know, because who would walk through a bed of flowers? Here we are walking back out of that part. Here I am, I got to tell you about the door a bit more. All these doors have unique locking mechanisms. I don't think we really looked at them too much in this video. There's the wheels of that ginormous door, which my good friend Cam Offenhauser, who's part of the nonprofit and my best buddy that's doing this, pointed out that these look like the mini Shea locomotive rails. And there's a lot of junk around this club that has been fashioned into devices like the moving thing over there. So here's my favorite thing of the club, the Petoskey Portland Cement. They left the logo. They made it so easy for us. I think they were just proud of their work, to be honest. They didn't think anyone would see it. Because I will say, all the casinos in Saratoga Springs, New York, burned to the ground. It was par for the course to get rid of the evidence. But this one remains. So we get to do this stuff. It's fun.
And the club ponytail, when it went up in flames, it's still unknown origin, right?
Yeah, fire of unknown origin. We still don't know why that was.
And recently, Taylor pointed out a couple of gas lines that go off of that section. So it could have easily have just been very controlled with the gas. Valve turned on, the building fills up, and boom. And that was in the winter of '69.
Yeah. We were metal detecting. We found the bottom of a lamp, like an outdoor lamp, and the lamp had a gas line. So the club ponytail probably had gas lamps all around the perimeter of it, which is just convenient if you do want to torch it. It's just convenient. I'm not saying they did that.
Great. Thanks, you guys. That video was a nice bonus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, it looks
Thank
like
you.
we've answered all the questions. And so anybody that wants to learn more can head out Saturday.
Yeah, and then you can contact Taylor through his nonprofit.
Yeah, our nonprofit's called Spirit of the Manitou, because that's what we want to do in this space, is to celebrate this story, of course, which we're doing, and I will continue doing. I'll never stop telling you guys this story, but to just celebrate what kind of the Club Manitou stands for, which is our industry now, resort. That's our industry up here. It was logging once, but it's resort now. And the stuff they did here, we still do to this day. There's a giant casino over there. Every restaurant serves alcohol. I mean, it's what they did when they ended up going to Vegas. They made resort casinos because they didn't need to attract wealth here. It's already here. So of course it popped up. It's great.
And feel free to stop into Arlington Jewelers, anytime,
Yeah.
and share any information right downtown.
Great. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everybody,
Thank
for joining.
you.
See you Saturday.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.